So, Washte again, welcome. And Ya'ate Indine, welcome. It is nice to meet each and every one of you across the globe. So we speak in the we because in our tradition, as in most Indigenous traditions, that word I, that ego, this trickster of the mind, gets us into a lot of trouble, as you've noticed around our globe. So when we speak in the we, it's to remind us that we are related to each one of you, to all living beings, and to all the worlds and realms that are seen and unseen. So we always speak in the we, because we have helped thousands of people, and there's no way we, this little human, could know all these things when we just know somebody's name. And we can diagnose, we can help doctors, we can help people at hospitals. It's really important to understand that none of us work alone. We all have helpers. We have helpers, you have helpers. And when we come together in a meeting like this, in a sacred ceremony, all your helpers and our helpers meet here. Like what Irene says in the West, from the eagle's eye view and a council gathering of ancestors. It's from this place we have a clearer vision of not what we need and what we want, but what is needed at a higher plane. So we come with that bias, and it's important that we also say to you that we cannot speak for all Indigenous people. We understand that the word shaman was used in one of the modules, and we need to share our own Indigenous understanding that the only people who can call themselves Shama are the people from Mongolia. That's their holy name for the holy people. That in many of the traditions, Indigenous traditions, there is not a word for a holy person. Everybody just knows who they are. They don't need to announce themselves. So it's important when you use that word, if you use that word, that you realize that that's an appropriation and that that's referring specifically to the people of Mongolia. And since we know some Shama from Mongolia, we wouldn't dare call ourselves a shaman. So, because that would be disrespectful to them. We have not gone through their traditions and their training and their learnings in Mongolia, although we hope to visit there. It's a dream, but right now it's a dream. So we want to just share that as a beginning. Before we begin to speak about anything else that's sacred, we would like to start with a prayer. And we would like, while we are praying, and this is the part, you'll know, Irene, to just shut it off and then we'll start again. We would like you to pray at the same time for whatever it is you need help with, whatever you need understanding about, whatever you need insight about, whether it be physical, mental, emotion, or spirit. We will use some of our traditional language and we will translate it. But we feel that before we ever speak of the sacred, that we have to honor the ancients, the ones that have been holding and who have sacrificed their lives so that we may have the chance on this day to be alive, to be given the privilege to wake up, to be given the privilege to be of service, and to be given the privilege to speak to you. And so unless we thank them and invite them, we can't speak. So we want you to understand that that's where this prayer is coming from, and that's why it's being said. And for us, it's not about what tradition you follow. We all come from the Creator or the Great Mystery. When we all pass, and we've helped many people pass, we all go back to the same place. The Christians don't go to one place, the Hindus don't go to another place, the mystics don't go to another place, the Jewish people don't go to another place, Indigenous people don't go to another place. At one time, we were all Indigenous. We all lived off the land. And then some twists and turns started coming, positives and negatives with technology. And we have forgotten, many have forgotten that connection to creation. We are not saying that's you that's on here, but we're just saying as a populace of two-leggeds, there's been a big shift. And that we are in the beginning hopefully, of a new paradigm shift that will shift us from one of power and greed to one of peace and prayer and love. And so with that hope, we're going to start this prayer. Oh. Sometimes it takes us a while to come back. So often we see a lot of things when we're praying, and there's a lot of things yet to come. The spirits asked us to share a story because this is very personal. So we would ask that you keep this amongst yourselves. You can talk about it as a group, but this is not something to be advertised. I don't know how to say that in a different way. They asked us, when we've been praying and preparing for this day to talk with you, they wanted us to share a story that would help you understand, for those of you who might not feel the connection to the other side, so that you would have a better understanding that they are with us all the time. We may not understand how, we may not understand why, we may not understand what happens to us in our lives sometimes. We may have confusion, we may have anxiety. This part of the West and the module you're learning with Irene, for us, the West is also about enlightenment and acknowledgement and knowledge. And it's about awareness. There are no accidents. These hands that are in these braces is not an accident. This happened for a reason. It was a message. This happened the morning we were leaving for the reservation to bring blankets, to bring school supplies to people who had no blankets and no school supplies. It was a day we were going to be meeting 2 days later, World War II veteran who was a code talker, who had no winter coat, no warm vest, no wool socks, and no long johns. And he lives in a shack with no electricity and no water. And he's a veteran, a code talker at 104. Why does that happen? It's a really good question. But there are no accidents, even accidents. And which part of our bodies absorb those accidents are not accidents either. We wanted to tell you a story of something because you're all, we believe most of you are from New York. Is that correct? Yes?
Actually, people are here from all over. There are quite a few people here from New York, but there are people from all over the country and sometimes Canada and outside of the country. So,
okay, well, they wanted us to choose something that happened in New York because the anniversary of it just passed 20 years ago last week. And at that time, when 9/11 happened, we had 4 days of ceremony in our house and people came from all over the world to pray. And then several months later, we were asked, or we shouldn't say really asked, because the spirits don't really ask. They make a suggestion. We've gotten to the point where we are old enough where they say jump, and we just ask how high, because we've learned the stubborn way to do it that way. And so we were in Colorado at the time, and we were asked, the spirits asked us to go to the pit in 9/11. And we took a deep breath, and we had 2 very young children at the time. One whom had seen, we did not have television in our home, but who saw planes on fire on his high chair for the same number of planes that were on fire. And then a call came in to tell us what had happened. And so when we were asked to go into the pit at 9/11, we said, okay. And several people who were here in Colorado at the time were saying, there's no way you're going to get in. No way, you're getting into the pit. It's a crime scene. And we said, that may be, but that's what we're being asked to do. And they want to help from that side. So they need to come through someone. So we'll just get a plane ticket and we're going to go. we actually wore this shawl on that day, and we wore some other traditional regalia that was not in other typical ceremonies. And we didn't know at the time when we arrived with a friend, we went to New York and a friend met us to help us get to the site. And she wanted to attend with us because she could not believe that we were going to even get into the site or anywhere near the site. And so we did not know at the time that they were giving tickets to get into the site. And it was guarded very heavily by police and National Guard. And we said, well, we're just going to go. We got online. And when we got to the police officer, he said, where's your ticket? We said, we don't have a ticket. We came to pray. There's work that has to be done here with many that are left here in shock. And he said, you can't come in. And we just took off our glasses and we asked him to just look at our eyes. And after several minutes, the two of us were crying. And at that point, he just moved aside and let us come in and walk into that area. And then we went right to where the National Guard was and asked to speak to the head of the National Guard so they could take us into the pit. And we actually never met that National Guard person who was in charge, but we stood for several hours. And after several hours, one man came by and said to us, we can't help you. Why are you here? And we said, we have to go into the pit. There are prayers and things that need to be done there. He said, you can't go. It's a crime scene. I can't take you. We will lose our job. And we said, we don't want you to lose your job. We just need to go in and pray. Don't worry about it. Spirit will take care of it. They've asked us to come. We'll go. And we'll wait. 3 or 4 hours later, he came back again. And he said, you're still here. We started laughing. We said, yeah, we're still here and we're going to stay here until we get into that pit. And he said, you're not going to be allowed and I'm going to lose my job. And I said, it's okay. We're not asking you to do anything. The right person will come at the right time. Spirit will provide. We just have to be patient to be the vessel. 3 or 4 hours left. Time passed. He came back again. And he said, how many days are you prepared to stay here? Because we had not had food or any water at that point. And we said to him, well, we don't know. They didn't give us how many days and nights it would take, but we have fasted up to 8 days and nights without food and water. So we know we can last that long. He said, I can't last that long. I said, we're not asking you to last that long. We're just going to stay and pray. And we just stayed in the same spot. We didn't move. And the friend that was with us kept saying, you're never getting in there. And I said, please be careful what you say. The spirits are listening. 4 hours later, so this is almost 12 hours now, he comes back and he said, I am going to lose my job. And we said, no, you're not. He said, there's nothing that's going to happen that's going to make you lose your job. We're just going to go and pray. So he said, if you're willing to pray, would you be willing to pray with the priest of the little church that was left standing next to the Twin Towers? He's really needed help. He's been really not in a good way. And so we said, absolutely. You can bring a whole group of people. Oh, no, we can't bring a whole group of people because we have to sneak you in as it is. So we said, that's fine. Bring him along. He's more than welcome. In the end, and the truth, no matter what tradition, it's only as pure as the heart that's praying, right? So it doesn't matter what the tradition is. So he, the priest, and this man's name was Misha, and our friend, he took us in a very circuitous back path. Now, we were wearing a shawl and regalia, so we were a little conspicuous. So he took us on a very long, winding time through lots of back streets in New York. And we eventually wound up right over the pit to pray. And we had cedar and sage with us, which is in our tradition, things to smudge with. And he said, "What's that? What's in the bag?" And we said, "It's just cedar and sage." And he said, "No, no, 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 no. That's the FBI. That's the CIA building. That's this building." I said, "It's okay. Relax. Take a breath. We're already on their lists. They already know us. They can just check our face out. We're already listed." Then he took a sigh of relief. He said, "I'm not going to get you in trouble." I said, "No, it's okay." And then we did a traditional song and sang. It was beyond emotional, to put it mildly. And by the time we finished, all of us were crying. And then we had a very big understanding as to why we were asked on that day and why he was chosen on that day to take us. And we looked at him and we said, "Come close, little one." Now, he was not little. He was like 6'3". I'm 5'4". So he's not really little, but to the ancients, he was a little one. They want us to give you a hug. And so we just hugged and let him just sob in our arms. We were luckily standing on a, what is that called? Like a cement pylon or something, so that we could be face to face. And we said, "Now we know why you were asked to come." And so we told him, and we're going to try to say this, but it's not going to work. We told him that he had a message from a father that had been waiting to thank him for what he had done, a man who had died, for his daughter, because Misha had helped a little girl whose father died in the Twin Towers. And he had been waiting all that time to try to get a message to her. And when we told Misha that, he just broke down sobbing. And he said, "I have to show you what we made." And he had made a makeshift altar of all the pieces of broken wood and had put it together on the side. And she had a picture of her father, and he helped her carve his name into the altar. And he actually made an altar for her father's picture. And they prayed there together. And we said after he showed us the altar, we said, "Now he wants you to tell her, now that you know that he's going to be ready to go after you tell her, so that she has time to say goodbye." He's been waiting to let her know that he watched her do that, but he didn't know how to let her know that. So part of why we're sharing that story, it's not that there aren't millions of stories like that with different people and different empaths who worked 9/11, who did a lot of death walking. There were so many people that were helping. But the spirits wanted you to hear that story so that you know that they are always there behind us, whether we know it or not, whether we can feel it or not, whether we can see them or not. They're there. And so are the ancient ones. So are the ones who are stuck in between for whatever reasons that they're stuck. And there's reasons for that. And they asked us to tell that story so that all of you would have a understanding of that eagle's eye view that can see on a different level what is needed and who needs it and how to deliver the message. Whether it's we that are chosen, whether it's one of you that is chosen, we never know who's going to be the one that is chosen. We just ask that each one of you allow yourself and your intuition to be open enough to be chosen, to offer yourselves up that way. We are just one spoke on a wheel for the circle of life, just like each one of you are. We are no different, no more, no less. And someone else could have gotten that same message. It just happened to come through us. So they wanted us to share that so that you would have an understanding that in the West, everything is connected. That is, in this reality, in the duality reality, in other realms, that there is really no separation between the veils, ever, ever. And so they wanted us to share that story today because of the anniversary of last week. And we thought you might find that interesting. You know, in the indigenous traditions, there's a lot of humbleness. There's a lot of sadness. We'll tell you that yesterday, the day before, we were at a ceremony for the Northern Arapaho in the city of Longmont in Colorado, who for the first time is acknowledging that the land the Coloradans live on belong to the Northern and Southern Arapaho, to the Cheyenne, to the Kiowa, to the Lakota, to the Dene, to the Comanche, to all the nations who traveled through it. And they had a ceremony to create a sister city between the reservation and the city of Longmont. And on that same day, in the morning, a consecrated sweat lodge was bulldozed down by accident on a university land in northern Colorado. That's the delicate balance we are in, all of us. We take a step forward to try to create community. We take a step forward to leave back that paradigm of power and greed and old teachings and old egos come in and create desecration. The sad part is there's no place on grandmother earth, no place that has not been desecrated one way or the other by either two-leggeds, crusades, religious wars. There's almost no place except places where humans have not been able to travel to. That's a sad commentary on our planet. But the wonder of it is each one of us is a change agent. Each prayer. How many of you by hands know about Matsuru Emoto? You know about the Japanese scientist Matsuru Emoto? For those of you who do not know Matsuru Emoto, we were asked to speak at a documentary about him after he passed because he was able to use the microscope and do experiments with the molecule of mini wichoni, of sacred water, and have people aim love or hate or anger or wisdom or prayer, and they actually could see the crystals of the molecule change. Each one of us, each one of you has that much power to change what is happening on our planet. Just from where you're sitting. You don't have to go out and be a big activist. You don't have to be a big climate striker. You don't have to be on the lists like some other people are on lists. Just pray. Just create that place, that pure place from your heart. Could you imagine if we all just did that? Even if we did it the same 5 minutes around the world, could you imagine that vibrational change, the energetic change that we could create, the ripples? Each one of you is like a stone thrown in the water, and there are lily pads, and every lily pad has to adjust to those ripples. Imagine being given that gift to be that stone, that donka, that stone nation, to be dropped into a ripple of water, to become one with the water and one with all the lily pads. That's the gift each of us has chosen to come and incarnate at this time together. It's no accident that Mary Beth and we got to meet. No accident. No accident that Mary Beth opened the door to Irene. No accident. No accident. We just sometimes can't see how they move us like little chess pieces. And of course, they only want one of each of us on the planet. For creation knows we've created enough entertainment all by ourselves. They never want two of us. One is enough. But Each one of us is unique. Each one of us adds so much to the world, and we add it differently. You know, we are really good at blowing up computers. Mary Beth can attest to that. We've blown up, we're now on our 10th iPhone. Apple has made us write a paper that they will not replace any more of our electronics because we work at such a high frequency that our last computer, actually the battery became like a bubble and was raising the keyboard, and they wanted to know what we were doing. And we said, all we were doing was typing. But what's important is it's an expensive side effect of our work, but it shows that they are here and they are willing to come through. There are many times we've been on the phone and people hear static, the phone gets disconnected. We have Panasonic phones, and we are now down to only 2 that work out of the 5 because they've blown them. We blow headsets about once every month, the old-fashioned kind. So electricity and the spirits don't work really well, but we're much better with smoke signals. It's much faster, and much more, how do we say, much more natural. But what's most important is that each of you have your own means of communication, your own way of rising to your highest essence, to come to that place of the West, to come to the place of what in the medicine wheel of the jaguar, the condor, the eagle. It's that place of being able to see from that height and only choose what you really need as opposed to what you want. The eagle only chooses to take a life because it's hungry, not because it's out for sport. The eagle has that level of wisdom, that level of knowledge. All the animal guides and the kingdoms have that. And so in this place of the West, it's about how do we, like the snake, shed the skins of our past, of our family of origins? How do we shed the enculturation that we've been indoctrinated to in Western society or Eastern society, and even Indigenous societies, all societies? How do we do that? How do we get away from this white colonial mind think? How do we get away from this binary way of believing that the world has to be binary in gender? In the native traditions, there were always Wishasha, they were sacred people who were two-spirit, always. They were revered. What would it be like if we could come from that eagle's eye view? What would it be like if we could actually accept each other all just as human beings without labels, without boxes, without putting us in these small places? Wouldn't it be, I would just like to be a human being. You know, sometimes we say, our kids will say, Mama, you're so crazy. And I say, that's really good. Because if we're crazy, we have lots of freedom. It's one reason we became a psychologist, because we could see things and know things. We figured we could get at least a good bed by a window on the 7th floor of some hospital someday, if they couldn't accept who we were. But wouldn't it be nice just to be human beings? Just to be human beings. We did a group once with a group of, we've worked in prisons, maximum security prisons. We've worked with cocaine and heroin addicts. We did a conflict resolution with some gang members, all who were told to leave their knives outside the room. So what do you think the chances of that were? So we asked the people who asked us to do this work, we asked them, we want you to give us knives. They're like, the whole point is to have no knives in the room. I said, no, let's bring knives in, sharp ones, like steak knives, really sharp ones. They all started to worry a little bit about who they had hired. They were a little worried. We just kept smiling and saying, don't worry, everyone will be safe. You can join us if you want. And many of them did not want to come and join us because these were gangs that had killed each other. So they brought in a lot of the gang members who had a minimum of at least 2 felonies. So they each had at least killed 2 people. And then there was us. And at that time, we hadn't killed anyone, and we still haven't killed anyone. But at that time, we hadn't killed anyone. And we were laughing about, and we said to them, we all know you're carrying, so let's just all admit that we're carrying. But we'd like you to take the knives that we brought. And they looked at us as if we had one too many heads on our shoulder. And we handed each gang member a knife. Now, it was a BIPOC group, and we understand Spanish, so we can listen to what they're saying and how some were Spanish, some were Black. It was all mixed BIPOC organization group. And we could tell that they thought this was a little unusual. Then once everyone had a knife and we had one as well, we asked them to cut their arms. And all of them looked at us with big eyes. Now, these were all young men. They had all at least taken 2 lives. So it's not like they weren't familiar with blood. They were familiar with knives. They were familiar with death. They all had lost someone. And here's a woman giving them a knife. And we say, we'd like you each at this time to cut your arms yourself. They'll start looking around at each other like, where did they bring this woman in from? How did she escape? And we must have said it 3 or 4 times. No one would cut their arms. Lots of tattoos. And we said, are you going to tell us all of you are afraid to cut yourselves when you've taken other lives? That wasn't scary, but to cut yourself is scary? And they sat there in silence, and they were saying some things that were, let's just say, not nice in another language. And we took the knife, we held up our arm, and we cut our arm. They sat there stunned. And we said, we all bleed the same. There is no one in here that does not want the same thing for their children. There's not one person in here that bleeds a different color. There's not one person in here that doesn't want freedom. There's not one person in here that does not want food or shelter or safety. Why? Why are you making each other bleed? And at that point, we said, if you really want to change what's happening and you want to save the next 49 generations in your neighborhoods, we're going to ask you to take your knives out of your pockets and let's sit on the floor. And I'll sit here. I'm not bleeding that much. Let's really sit and have a conversation. And it was an incredible conversation. So part of what we're trying to say, they tell us what to say. You know, we never, as we said to Irene, we try to plan, but they hijack us all the time because they decide what stories they want to have heard. But we all want the same things. But somehow we learn how to stop talking to each other. Or our talks are like this. Or like in our country now, there's so much division and derision. There's so much extremism. How do we bring all of us together? How do we bring all these lessons from the different directions together? First within ourselves. Because as our brothers say, who sometimes on our international prayer circle, and you're welcome to join us if that's something you would like. When my brother Elvin comes from the res, the first thing he says is pray for yourself first. Pray for yourself. Because if you're not balanced, how can you help anyone else? How can you help anyone else? And that's so important. We cannot become agents of change. Even in our prayer, if we're not clear here. So here's the first level of homework. This is that going into place, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through prayer. And everybody does it differently. There's no one right way. There's no one right way. The most important ingredient in prayer or meditation is that you're in your heart. There is a fifth chamber of the heart that science does not yet know about. Fifth chamber, and it is the heart mind. And that's what really directs ourselves. And so part of why we're sharing this information and sharing with what they're asking us to share is to inspire you. Not that you don't have your own inspiration, but you can, if you're inspired, how can you share your inspiration with each other? How can we walk down a street and maybe just smile at someone? Maybe that smile is the first thing, kind thing that someone has received on that day. Many of you on here, they're saying, are caretakers. You may be very good at giving, but how good are you at receiving? How many of you hold your breath without realizing it until your body forces you to take a breath? If you cannot receive the breath of life, which is your first gift from creation, how can you receive anything else? That's why we need to pray for ourselves first, because creation lives inside of us. And if we can keep that fire alive, there is absolutely nothing that can stop us. Everything is divinely guided. Everything. Nothing is impossible. Nothing. Nothing. We believe it. We've witnessed more miracles than one could even imagine. So not only are we divinely guided, not only is everything impossible, there's nothing that's impossible, but we are sent here not to survive, but to thrive. To thrive, there's a big difference between thriving and surviving. How many of you text? How many of you text? We're still not great at it. We're one of those people that use one finger at a time. But if you were going to text the word impossible, I am possible. Never let that, be careful with the word never, because they always make us eat those words. Work hard not to use the word impossible. Remember, impossible means I am possible. All is possible. We are only limited by this trickster mind that says things are impossible, or the world cannot change, or things in Texas will not change, or things in Florida will not change, or galaxies won't change. We are not the only living beings in these galaxies by any stretch. Sometimes they look at us with great pity. Sometimes they look at us with great amusement. Wouldn't it be nice if we could collaborate more together and then learn how to collaborate with them and beyond? There's a whole group of beings who are just waiting for you to set intentions, really clear intentions for what it is you want, what it is you're trying to understand on a physical, mental, emotion, and spirit level. But if you say, well, I'm not sure, I think I can do it, and the spirits sit over here, well, they're not sure they can do it. They think they can do it. So we'll just hang here till they figure it out, if they really want it. So our intentions and our language needs to be very clear. We need to be careful not to speak in absolutes, not to speak in black and whites, because life is all shades of gray. There's always the realm of possibilities, all the time. The only ones that limit ourselves are us. This body is small. It's really very tiny. We've been out of our body many times. And to come back in, it's this tiny, tiny little space. But this tiny little space can do a lot of things. You just have to have the heart, open up the mind, to open up to creation, to that ego and the eagle's eye view, to know that everything is possible. If you can dream it, you can create it. We've seen it. We've done over the last year, and Mary Beth was helpful in this as well, along with many people across the country. We helped the Dene Nation during the COVID pandemic, when the only thing they got, like all the other reservations, were body bags. Their nurses and doctors and EMS workers were dying because they didn't even have masks. And we were up on the hill praying for someone who'd passed on their 4th day. And when we were up there, the Spirit said the Dene people would be the first that would be hit the hardest. So we're going to explain what Dene is. Dene, you know as the Navajo nation, but Navajo means thieves. How much do you think the Navajo nation likes to call themselves the Navajos? That was a name given to them by other peoples, just like the word Sioux, given to the Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota, was given to them by the French because they were camped by a windy river that was like this, and they said it moved like a snake. So they got named the Sioux, which means snake. So we want you to be aware of how insidious some of these things are. But we made 9 trips. 40% of the people there on the Dene reservation do not have running water or electricity. But it's not just that reservation. It's everywhere. Many people on that reservation have been poisoned by the uranium mining done in the 1950s that was never cleaned up. It's considered too dangerous to clean it up, but it's okay for the people to drink the water. There are children there being born, and the Geiger counter is registering on their body. How does that happen in this world? Now, still, the people in Appalachia, still without running water and electricity. This is on all reservations. So we're trying to share this because a lot of people don't know these things. And the eagle's eye view shows it from every direction. This last regime that was in started uranium mining on Pine Ridge the 2nd week after he got into office. And it's still not cleaned up. So there are a lot of things that happen that are still happening to the forgotten people. That's what the Indigenous people call themselves, the forgotten people. Because as the Black Lives Matter movement really took off, no one thought about the Indigenous who were here first. Not a lot. Now it's becoming bigger and they're being mentioned more. But what's most important is that wouldn't it be nice if we could all just be human beings and not be broken down by race? Can't we just all live together in peace and prayer and love? We really are capable of it. We've seen it. We have seen it in our lifetime. We've seen it at Standing Rock, where we lived for 5 months with nations from all over the world. Japan, Norway, Africa. We actually got an Israeli and a Palestinian who'd been tortured in an Israeli prison to sit and talk to each other. They were both there illegally, and they both then became watchdogs for each other because they knew if they got arrested, they would both be sent, the Israeli would be sent back to Palestine, the Palestinian would be sent back to the Israeli prison. So they helped each other. That's all it takes. There was no money at Standing Rock. We all just learned to help each other. We can do this. You can do this. We all can do this. And so part of us wanting to share and talk is for you to understand that you are just as important, just as powerful in your prayer, in whatever actions, whatever discussions, whatever ways you talk with each other. You can create change energetically in every single moment, not only in your own life, but in the lives of everyone that you touch. There's a place in Italy, you know, we talk to the animals, we talk to the Standstill Nation. There's a place called Diamanther several years ago that started to record the singing of the plant nation. And they actually could record with electrodes the songs of the different plants. It's like angelic music. If you ever get a chance to visit it when COVID opens up, they're trying to save the plants and the frequency of the sound of the plants and the songs of the plants. Everything is alive, everything. So we want to share those kinds of things and help you understand that there's nothing you cannot do, nothing. So we want to open this up. We know we've been talking a lot. We don't want to be talking at you. We want to be talking with you. And if you do not want the question recorded, please feel free to say so Irene can. We have a lot more. We could be talking for hours. We told Irene we may be talking till 9 o'clock your time. I mean, the spirits just, they love to share. They're just saying we should talk about the work we do. Is that okay, Irene, for a minute?
That would be fine.
Okay. So they said that that we should tell you about the ceremonies that we do. Mary Beth hosted some ceremonies in New York for us where we created circles where people came in. They didn't know each other. Some actually did know each other, but for the most part, they didn't know each other. And we tried to create circles of 7. And then someone would self-choose to put themselves in the middle. No names. And then we would scan them and see their body, and the spirits would give us a frequency that would be needed for their specific body. So a vibration could be created by each of the people in the circle to create a tone. For some people, it was 1 tone, 2 tones, or 3 tones to vibrate their body in the way that it needed to be vibrated for healing. And then some people were asked to aim color at different organs. It was all whispered. The person in the middle didn't hear anything. And then once we got all the circles going, then we went back to the first person and asked if we could put our hands on them. Because you always have to ask permission before you walk into someone's electromagnetic space. They have a right to say no. And if they said yes, we would put our hands on them. And people had profound healing experiences. Profound. Some crying, some screaming. We've done them in Boston. We've done them in California. We have not done them here because of COVID. And then everybody would share, whoever felt like sharing, and then we would start again. As each circle started again, the vibration of the room went higher and higher and higher and higher. And people were getting more and more exhausted, but so engrossed by being in that tone and watching what was happening and watching themselves be healed simultaneously. So it's not just the person in the center, it's also the people in the outer circle. Those are the group, that's the group work that we do. And then the individual work that we do is it's a 4-day ceremony. Someone calls us, they hear about us. We don't advertise. And we pray with that person for 24 hours for free. Because we want to make sure that it is in this highest and best interest of the person that we're working with. And that the ceremony is needed. So that we don't waste their time or their money or our energy if it's not in their best interest. If a healer says they can help everyone, run away very fast. One person cannot help everyone. They can't. It has to be the right triangle. This person, and then creation at the top. Because you're adding helpers from every direction. And the first couple of days, it's like the farmer. We're preparing the earth. We're learning the person's physical, mental, emotion, and spirit frequency. because in order to enter their body, we have to actually become them so that we don't create disharmony within their body. And then on the third day, we're on the phone for 3 hours, 3.5. One lady, we just did 4 hours. And we travel through every organ on a physical, mental, emotion, and spirit level, so that by the time each person finishes, they have a blueprint that's been illuminated for them by spirit of where they're stuck and what their homework might be, so that they can become closer to their truest essence. And then we take the tobacco, which is not tobacco like you know as like cigarettes, it's made with herbs and plants. And then we place that tobacco that's been with us during that time in the earth, so that there's enough rain and enough sun, so that the seeds of that prayer can take root. And then we check in with them the next day. For some people, we've said, one man got told, you don't need a ceremony, just stop procrastinating, go have your surgery. That's what you need. You don't need a ceremony. Go have your surgery. You want to have a ceremony, have it later. Another person was told, wait 6 months. Certain things need to unfold in your life that would make this more meaningful. So it's never always a yes. And we can't be attached to whether it's a yes or no, which is why we ask to know nothing. So that's a little bit how we work, how the spirits allow us to work in the non-traditional world. In the traditional world, we're a Sundance leader, we do traditional doctoring, we do different things in a traditional way, but in those ways, there cannot be any money exchange. But it's a little hard in this world to give tobacco to utility companies for mortgages. They don't usually like to take it. So we had to find another way. The elders had to give us permission to do something differently. But they just asked us to explain that so that you would understand how the two realms can meet. And they just told us to tell another story, so we're going to tell it. We were at a house gathering in California. And we were saying to some people, I don't know, we were talking about something, and we said Fukushima was not an accident. People were like, what? I was like, Fukushima was not an accident. It was an experiment. And people were like, oh, how do you know that? I said, because they told us. And we had a little tap on our shoulder. And we had someone lean in and whisper into our ear, how do you know that? And we said, I wonder who that is. So he said, would you step outside, please, madam? I was like, okay, must be one of the people with the lists. The gig might be up. We stepped outside with that person and he said to us, how do you know that? And I said, who are you, first of all? And he introduced us and I said, why do you want to know? Second of all, and he said, we're a nuclear physicist. And we've all been comparing around the globe, comparing our statistics underground, because we're coming to the same conclusions you came to, but how did you get there? Are you a nuclear physicist? And we said, absolutely not. I said, we've worked with nuclear physicists. We believe in nuclear physicists. We believe in quantum physics, but we work with a different realm. And so we began to work with each other. So during Standing Rock, we got to be quite friendly actually. And when we came home one time from Standing Rock, we said to him, they're hitting us with microwaves and LRAD machines. We need your help. And he said, what do you need? And we said, if we can give you the frequency that's needed, those microwaves and the LRAD machines are deteriorating people's organs. And we're getting shot every day, 24/7, beside the pesticides that they're spraying us with. Can you duplicate the frequency? Can you infuse it in stones or crystals so that we can take it back and make sacred water ceremony for the people? And he worked with a whole group of people to do radionics. And we didn't know anything about radionics at the time. We got quite an education. And everything we're sharing with you, we're asking that you only keep it within this circle, because one of the people who did the radionics found a mysterious passing. But we're sharing this to help you understand how much science and spirit overlaps, how much our worlds overlap. Everything is divinely guided. All the science, all the wisdom from all the living beings, it's all shared, all the mycelium, all the roots of the standstill people. They go for hundreds of thousands of miles across the whole earth. Trees from here talk to trees in Africa. We just have to get quiet enough to listen, or to put our backs to their backs, to feel the barks move so we can breathe with them. Can you imagine if we could all just get that still? We've worked with people as far as Dubai and Australia. Spirits don't know finite time. They don't know boundaries. Only us little humans know boundaries. Wouldn't it be great if we could expand ourselves? That's our dream. That's our prayer. That we all come out of our boxes. We all come out of our traditions. We all come out of our labels. We all come out of our genders, because each of us has male and female aspects to us. And how do we just become human beings, or part of the planet of all living beings? How can we become one sacred family of all living beings? Because if we could do that, we got it made. We can change anything. So with that, we're going to stop talking for a minute to give you a chance to ask questions in the spirit of the West. Feel free to unmute yourselves, or I don't know, Irene, how you do this.
Yeah, they can just, everyone can unmute themselves if they like.
Okay.
Dr. Michael, hi.
Hi. Can you raise your hand so we can see where you are?
I'm right
Okay,
here.
great, thanks. We're partially sighted,
Okay.
so it's hard to see these little boxes. So
Yeah.
thank you. Just put a sign so we can at least find you on the little box system.
So my name is Melanie.
Hi, Melanie.
It's nice to meet you in person, because I was in the class with you with Irene for her mindful awareness course that we recently had. So we've spoken. This direction for me has been the most unbelievably transformational direction. I made the first week, and I'm here tonight, and there's so many synchronicities and reasons, but and you are the final piece. So seeing you here tonight, I thank Spirit, I thank you, I thank Irene, I thank everybody who's here. My life is about to change quite a bit, and this direction.
No. You just limited yourself. My life is about to just change quite a bit. My life is about to change. Give the Spirit the full magnitude of all you can be.
Okay.
Don't limit yourself with your language.
So I guess actually in my head, so that's what I said, but in my head is I am in a major transition right now.
How about we are in a major transition?
We are in a major transition.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's true, because if we're all connected and the work that I do connects with others, we are in a major transition. So just the deepest gratitude and thanks. And I'm just so in love with the fact that you're here tonight, and thank you to everybody else.
Melanie, thank you for introducing yourself. We remember you from we took the course with Irene for we are EMDR trained as well, but now we just work with the spirits and we do things a little bit differently, but we were doing training with EMDR and have done that in the past. So that's how Melanie and Irene and I and Mary Beth, that's how the doors open. But thank you, Melanie, for sharing. Any other questions? We would love to hear from you. Oh, come on. Really?
So I'll ask a question.
Oh, great.
So
we can see who it is.
Right here, it's Irene.
Okay. Oh, Irene up there. Okay.
Yes. So you talk about the poverty on the reservations and what the indigenous tribes go through. And the flip side of that is the belief systems that you can really create life however you want to create it. So how do you understand how that poverty continues for these ancient traditions?
Well, there's infrastructure poverty, but there is a richness of spiritual practice that can't be touched. So for example, a lot of our elders and traditional brothers have been sweating since the pandemic, all through the pandemic, have never gotten sick. So there are some who live close to the cities like Shiprock and Gallup, but there are a lot of people that live in the outskirts where there's no infrastructure, there's no electricity. And so that's why we did 9 months of COVID relief, getting masks. New York City mask makers sent masks. We had mask makers here. We raised with Mary Beth and many other people, $40,000 and got 50 275-gallon water tanks to spread around the reservation. How can you stop a pandemic if you can't wash your hands? How do you stop a pandemic if you don't have a mask? Right? We had an orthodontist give us his booties right out of his office. He said, take my booties, I don't need them. I'm working on, what do they call, braces. He said, I don't need my booties. Take all my booties. Mm-hmm. So we brought clothes, we brought food. We're just down there with blankets and school supplies and book bags. So we're going to be continuing drives all through the next couple of months. We're hoping to get more help because clearly with some fractured wrists, although we drove to the reservation that way, it's not quite as easy to lift things. But we have privilege. I mean, the poverty is there because there's not the money. And because, for example, on the Dene Reservation, it's 28,000 square miles wide. So, for example, when we go and deliver, or we went to ceremony, or we went to go see this elder who was the World War II veteran, every time we come back, we have to have our car aligned because the roads are not paved. There are very few roads that are paved. So when the water comes, the holes come, you try to avoid them, but they're all over. So it's the infrastructure that's a problem. It's the way the government has designed and broken the treaties, and the way there's not money and manufacturing companies on the reservation, which is one of the jobs we're trying to do. We actually created the first mobile library with the help of many, 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 many people, 4,500 books for children to take out. And we hope to raise money to create the first library ever on a reservation.
Beautiful.
So it may be poverty, but they don't see themselves as being poor. They see themselves as being blessed until they come off the reservation and they see the kind of houses the rest of us live in. Does that make sense? They didn't choose to live where they're living.
No, of course not.
No choice.
Yeah. I want to mention also to the group that Maria has a GoFundMe campaign, and everybody has the link to it. I sent it in the class reminder, but that money goes to exactly what she's talking about, to providing for people on the reservation and school supplies and blankets and that kind of thing. So feel free to take a look at that. And if you feel motivated to do it, it's a really worthy cause.
And pass it forward. There are children who've lost their parents and grandparents because of COVID.
Yeah.
So it's not just on the Dene Res, but on a lot of reservations. So, and a lot of places around our whole country, right? And across many countries. So it's not just our Indigenous in Northern America. We really need to say that it's everywhere. We just can only help so many people. We have to try to be a little focused. Yes. Otherwise, we get nothing accomplished.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irene. Any other questions? Please.
Hello, Dr. Michael. This is Michelle. I'll wave.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks, Michelle.
Hi. In the words that are being used, we are so grateful. The moment that I saw your picture and Zoom, I just started crying. So I feel we feel very connected. I have a lot of things I would like to say. I don't have we're having a hard time integrating all of it. So I'll figure it out at some point, and would love to share with you, but mostly thank you for the reminder how connected, and that things are not coincidence, which we really believe, and try so hard to make sure that frequency continues and is put out there, even if things are very dire. So thank you so much for that reminder.
Thank you. You know, it's easy to be a yogi in a cave and be spiritual and focused when everyone's bringing you food and taking care of you. It's hard to be a spiritual walker on the path when you're trying to figure out how to juggle so many parts of your lives, how to pay your bills, how to do this. That's the spiritual warrior. Those are the people that are really the ones that have to take the most effort to stay centered. That's why we say, here is the first. It's the most important. Get centered here. And then you can go out from there. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, come on, we made you all silent? We don't have that much power. You all have so much to offer, or you wouldn't be working with Irene. You aren't also all shy. We know that. We can out some of you. We do that in our prayer circle, right, Mary Beth? We say, who has prayers? And then we actually make people say something. We just say, okay, the spirits are saying you have a prayer. You have something you need to say. So don't make us out you. We want to try to be respectful. Okay, here's one the spirits are asking. Did someone just raise their hand? No. Okay.
I'd like to say something.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
When Irene told us that you were coming, we wasn't comfortable. So I went out and I found you in the other places, and I touched your energy, and I knew it was safe for me to be here with you.
Rick, that is wonderful. That is wonderful discernment. It's really important that all of us really do that we check things out before we expose ourselves to places. You know, we all have electromagnetic energy around us. And sometimes those energies can come harmoniously when they overlap, or sometimes they can grind. So it's really important, and we want to respect that you did not just take Irene's word, that you actually checked for yourself. That's really wonderful. And thank you for having the courage and the respect, not only to do that for yourself, but the honesty to share it with us and the rest of the group. Thank you for that.
Well, if you didn't share it, then you're not being real. And you have to know that we're real.
And unfortunately, sometimes in this Western society, being real is not honored. And so it's important to check and use discernment before one becomes vulnerable, to make sure that it's safe. So we applaud you for that, and thank you for sharing that. We really are very grateful.
And I would just like to add to that when you offered to speak to this group, Maria, it ties into what you were saying earlier. This is not by chance. You know, it felt to me that this was not by chance. And even though Mary Beth was kind of the conduit, the fact that you showed up in my class was not by chance, you know, and the fact that you offered to come here was not by chance. And I felt that, and I realized that. Otherwise, I never would have even asked the group if they were comfortable with this. So I appreciate you being here very much.
Well, we feel very blessed. And there is a person, we can't read the name, Vale Leonard, is that how to pronounce it? We may not be saying it correctly.
Yes.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes.
They're asking, they're saying you have a question or there's something you want to share.
Well,
we know that somebody, Alicia's happy over there, but you're getting
so
you're getting it.
So first, let me just say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you from the bottom of my soul. You said so much that resonates so deeply with me. I am a caregiver. I am a spiritual warrior. I have recovery residences for women recovering from drugs and alcohol. We have 5 houses. We also train and support people to learn and to understand what that journey of addiction looks like, family members and friends and community. And so what you spoke tonight, the oneness, and I had an annoyance with the pronouns, that suddenly we see all the pronouns in the email and I'm like, really?
Really?
No, really? 2021, really?
Do you see what ours is? Ours says
So,
we, us, and all.
Yes. And that's why I'm so filled up. My body is like throbbing right now. I'm filled with a hope and joy to hear you speak of no more labels, just to be human, just to be connected, just to recognize that spirit is all around us and that we are interconnected, and that this is the time for us to do the work, that none of us are here by coincidence, that we're all here, one another, heart to heart, breast to breast, soul to soul, to lighten up this world, to make the difference, and to hear you speak it, that across all things, and when you talk about all of you coming together from around the world, that was just powerful. I am grateful to be with this group. I am grateful to be with you. We acknowledge and honor you. Aho.
Aho. And we invite all of you to join us in our international prayers on Thursday mornings, and now down to once a month. We were doing once a week for 2 years, but these have taken now a little bit of a priority. So we have to go to OT and PT, but you are welcome to go on the website and sign up for the newsletters. Join us in prayer. It's open to people of all kinds, because that's how we break down the barriers. And if there's anyone in this group who's working with anyone that they feel our talk could help, you only have to be one tiny candle in a room of darkness to dispel all of it. That's all it takes, one tiny little candle. And we're really short. The only people we're taller than is our cats. So we're really short, but it only takes one candle. Go ahead, Alicia, you wanted to ask a question. Say something.
I want to make a comment. I want to thank you, Dr. Michael. I respect your work and I respect what you're doing. And I am closely affiliated with the work that Vail does with the homes and women in transition. And I personally work with women in transition, veterans in transition.
Wow.
That, yes, I'm a veteran. And
thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Do you know that the Indigenous people are the biggest minority in all the world wars?
The wind talkers. I knew exactly who you were talking about. But I guess my question is, when we are challenged with what appears to be the negative bumps in the road in our journey, we reach out to keep each other empowered, but sometimes who motivates the motivator?
We understand. And so you will hear us say a prayer at the end, and that will give you a clue, because we can't end without, if you invite the spirits in, you also have to say thank you to them and let them go. So we're going to go overtime. If that's okay, if you need to get off, feel free to do that. But that will give you Alicia, some idea. But it's really about also creating that community. So when you're down, Vail helps feed you. When I need feedback, Mary Beth helps me. When Mary Beth needs feedback, we call her. When Irene needs feedback, that's how it works, right? It's all about understanding that we're all going to hit the bumps and the glitches in the road. We have to. Remember the oyster. The oyster grows, needs sand and grit an enormous irritation to be able to secrete an enzyme to create the first layer of the pearl. Then it needs more grist and more sand and more irritation to make another layer of a pearl. Do you imagine how much irritation and sand and grist that oyster gets before it makes one pearl? Each of us is a pearl. We are the only thing that is perfect is creation. We are imperfect by design. It's that sand and grist that makes us that pearl at the end, whenever that time is. And we promise you on the other side, there's more grist and more sand because we never stop learning on the other side. But it's about when we're feeling those bumps and we're feeling that irritation and the grist, and it looks like all is lost or things are not going to go the way we hope in our world, in our politics, and whatever. That's when we have to grab on even harder and go deeper and ask for help and ask each other for help in community. Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to ask? Thank you, Alicia. Anyone else want to share or ask a question or even just share whatever they're feeling?
Hi, this is Alyssa.
Hi, Alyssa.
Hi. We, with every ounce of our heart, say thank you. All have given us permission tonight. And for this heart, it was a language that we understand. We can't speak it back, but we can radiate it.
Mm-hmm.
And we are so full and excited to take this now and just live in it. So with I'm flying right now. Flying.
Wouldn't it be great to take off? Wouldn't it be great?
I believe we could.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is what coming together in community is about. You know, if you go on our website, there's a lot of radio interviews from different places when they were interviewing us about Standing Rock. It's like, find the inspiration. Be the caterpillar that sticks their head out, that might be afraid our wings are not formed yet, and take that breath and that leap of faith and spread your wings. What's the worst thing that can happen? You'll fall to the ground, you'll fall on a beautiful wildflower, and then you'll learn how to work the wings. It's really not that hard. It's really very simple. It's really just about the courage to start the journey, to start the walk. It's really what it's about. So thank you very much, Alyssa. Anyone else want to share anything else that they may be feeling that they'd like to inspire anyone else? All of you can be inspirations in and of by yourselves, not just us. We're all the spokes on the wheel, on the circle of life. We just happen to be the one being honored tonight to be given the chance to speak a little bit more than others. Yeah. Remember, just because we're an elder doesn't mean we have the most wisdom. It just means we've reached a certain age, right? Sometimes when people have asked us to teach them, we say, I don't know. What we know we can fit on the top of a pin. The more we know, the more we realize how little we know. So there's probably more of you that know more things than we do. We're just getting the honor tonight. Hopefully one of you will get the honor another night. But if there's anyone else who wants to share anything, please feel free.
Yes, I do.
Okay, Barbara.
We know that the story you told tonight about Ground Zero was not just for that little girl, it was also for me and my family. One of the men you were waiting for permission to do that would have been my brother. And he is such a broken, hurt man from the experience of having been there. And it's just so...
Your brother's Misha?
No, my brother was
like that. He was like
a
that.
colonel. and he
Okay.
would be in charge of, he was in charge of the security for the whole place. So I have stood at ground zero with him holding me. And he's not the same man, and he's hurt. And it's been, I feel like we feel like we have a mission now to pray for our soldiers, not just my brother, but
Mhm.
all the people who did that work.
Yep.
Yes.
And you're all welcome when we get our new sweat lodge up and running. We're going to make a joke now. It's an Indigenous joke. You're all welcome to come into the sweat lodge and we'll cook you. Because
Okay.
we heat the stones and we pray. But what we're saying is, if you can get him, there are special ceremonies that are done for veterans and especially for first responders that Indigenous people do to help them bring back the spirit that's been lost in that chaos. The Chinese have a pictograph that means chaos, or depending on how it's written in the sentence, also means opportunity. Out of chaos brings opportunity. Try to help him get someplace where he can be with like-minded people with PTSD to get the help, because they're all suffering, all of them, and they deserve nothing less than the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to share anything that would inspire the rest in the group?
Maria, it's Irene again. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the changing cycles of our planet. I mean, it's so clear to me that the veils between the worlds are getting thinner and thinner, and there's no longer a here and there. It's all happening at once.
Yeah.
And on our planet, there's such chaos that's kind of ushering in this cycle. And I'm very interested in terms of how the Lakota philosophy understands all the upheaval that we're having, and how is that part of, well, I'm sure it's part of the new cycle, how you see it as part of the new cycle, and what do they see? What do you see for our future?
So all the Indigenous prophecies, and there are many of them across all the different traditions, there's so much happening. Mary Beth can tell you there was a prayer circle that we were doing where the spirits took us, and we wound up seeing 8 hospitals and several rooms in several hospitals and pediatric wings. And we were sobbing because we completely fell apart during that prayer. And we really had a hard time coming back. And we actually reached out to Mary Beth and asked her to check, because we saw a child on a vent at LIJ, because we had been working at that hospital many years before. And we saw several of the children in critical condition. And Mary Beth, being a nurse practitioner, had said she hadn't heard anything. And then Mary Beth, will you add what you found out?
Yes, it was very easy to find, unfortunately, that was the case, and that there were conversations from pediatric specialists about the rising number of children being affected by COVID. And it was a month ago, I think at that point there were 5 children in the ICU at LIJ, and one of them was vented. So it confirmed what you had seen, and that was not the only hospital on Long
And
Island.
there are times when we're in prayer circle where we're saying, beware, there's tornadoes coming, there's earthquakes coming, we're having flooding that's coming, and these things are going to be happening. And grandmother's trying to cleanse, and they're the earth is trying to find its balance. And so that's across the board happening in prophecies in all the Indigenous communities. And so it's can be frightening, you know. Mary Beth, there was a tornado on Long Island, right after we said that. And then there was an earthquake in Mexico City right after that. And, you know, so the earth changes are happening. Let's go back just a minute. The virus came, first of all, the virus was man-made, period, between the US and China. There were US scientists in China. However, we have many of the countries who have power have been doing germ warfare and germ experimentation for a long time. Many of our veterans have suffered at the hands of that. Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, Gulf War, right? What's important, and the most important thing is to understand, is that when those things get out of balance, grandmother tries to balance them in other ways. And she's trying to cleanse herself. And she's trying to wake us up. The virus is about teaching us all how to come together and have each other's backs. Actually, how to understand that everything we do impacts another living being. It does. Are we all learning that? Some of us are, and some of us are not. And that is one of the reasons that this virus will continue through 2023 minimum. Minimum, that's the prophecies, minimum. Going into 2024. However, we can change the course of these things if we all start seeing each other as relatives. If we each start seeing that we're caretakers of each other. That's what it's about. That's what the gang members learned. We all bleed the same. We all come from the same family. Where did this twister brain get mixed up to think that we're separate, not only from creation, but from each other, right? So these changes that are happening are trying to wake us up. It's really what it's about. Notice what happens when Louisiana gets flooded, when all these places get flooded and earthquakes and the electric grid goes off in Texas, how people jump into help. What would it be like if we could all jump into help without the disaster? What a concept. That's what it's about. Can we evolve without war? Can we evolve without disaster? Can we evolve to understand that everything we think, do, and feel impacts not only this vehicle, but every other vehicle and every other living being we come in contact with? Is that helpful, Irene, to answer the question?
Yes, I think it's very helpful. Thank you so much. Beautiful
Okay.
explanation.
Anyone else? Okay, we're watching the time. We know. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi.
Barry Sue, is that how you say it?
Yeah, Barry Sue. Dr. Michael, it's an honor. Thank you so much for coming and joining our group. Your energy is incredible. I need to mention this because I feel like I was connected to you a long time ago. In East Northport, there's a elementary school, Fifth Avenue, that my daughter went to, and she took on a project that was to collect clothing for the Lakota tribe. And we sent 6 or 7 U-Hauls full of clothing from that elementary school when my daughter, now being 24, but she was a second grader. And again, when I heard about you coming, there was something brought me right back to that moment, that there was a connection back then. And like you say, everybody's connected and nothing's by chance. And the fact that you are a Lakota elder, I just feel like there was a energetic connection at that point in time through me, my daughter, my family, and that there is like an ancestral kind of link. So
there's always ancestral links, no matter
Yes,
who
'cause
you
we're
are,
all
because we were all
connected.
Indigenous at one point, right? And I
exactly.
just need to say I'm Lakota and Dene so that a bolt of lightning doesn't come down from my other relatives who aren't mentioned and gets me after you leave. So we are many part, and they were part Yaqui, but you know, we try to mention all those parts because they've all died so that we could be here on this day, so we could learn the things we could learn, so that we could share what we're sharing. And we have to honor that they gave their lives so that we could be alive, just like your ancestors gave their lives so that
Yes.
you could be here in this moment, in whatever way
Yes.
they had to sacrifice, right? So I just had to correct you because you only named one, and I didn't want the rest of the ancestors getting angry, because if you think you guys have a hard time, try living with all our ancestors. It's very crowded in our house, as Mary Beth would say.
Understand.
Anyone
yes.
else want to share? Thank you,
And
Gary, Sue.
I just wanted to say one more thing. In that the belief system of dreaming the world that you want to create, it starts in our own hearts. And that was sort of along the line of what you had mentioned and said, is that we dream our world into being, and that it all starts with us. And if we create it from a place of love and an open heart and unity, then we can create a beautiful world. And that's just what I was going to put out there. And that, thank you.
Thank you. You know, there was a time when we would leave Standing Rock and we would be crying all the way home, and we lived pretty far from Standing Rock because we felt we were leaving civilization and coming back to another country, because everything there was peaceful amongst the people who chose to be there. It wasn't peaceful with the police and the other people, but it was peaceful for the people who were trying to save the water, for the 2 million people downstream from the reservation. And so we are all related. If we could just remember that for all of us. Anyone else want to say anything? Go ahead, Elena.
Hi. Yes.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much. I feel so honored to be in your presence. Thank you. And
We're
thank you
honored to be in your presence as well. You're no less than we are.
Thank you. And it was so, I'm so thankful that you shared so much with us tonight. It's just, I just feel so touched. And I wanted to ask you something that, or two things that I struggle with. One is, do the spirits speak of the vaccine? Because it's so confusing to get the vaccine, not get the vaccine. Do they speak about any information about that?
So we're going to be mindful of what we say.
Yes.
We got told in October that something terrible was going to happen to hundreds of thousands of people, and there would be deaths around the world. We were moving to Colorado, and the spirits told us not to downsize because something was coming. At the time, they didn't tell us in July after Sundance. It waited till October, and then November, Wuhan started. And then we realized our children were coming home and we would need a place for them to live. So we got a different kind of house. But we think it has to be a personal choice. We initially came out with the spirits with the coronavirus preventative protocol, and everyone who's been on it has not gotten COVID. We also worked with a brilliant Yale Columbia Presbyterian doctor and came out with a whole protocol with the spirits. We worked days and nights, coming out with a protocol of things to take a week before the vaccine and 2 weeks after. Because we also know a lot of people have been long haulers and have been hurt by the vaccines. But also it is saving a lot of people. So this has to be a personal choice. And the reason we say that, like when someone asks to work with us, we spend a day in prayer. We cannot be attached as a human to the outcome of what their prayer is, because then we disempower them. each one of us is on a very personal journey. And so it has to be up to each one of us to take the responsibility for whatever actions we take. So we say that not to avoid what you're asking, but to say to you, it has to come from an inside knowing. Is that helpful?
Yes, yes, thank you. Yeah, my other issue I wanted to ask, but possibly you can answer it. So I live in New York, in Queens, and my whole area is being just bombarded with, smart meters and EMF, man-made EMF.
5G and all of that.
And we all know it's dangerous and harmful. So I've been struggling all summer, praying and asking for guidance. Do I stay here? Do I just work on my frequency? Do I leave? It's so expensive to go anywhere where I live. Is there any guidance about, the future of our society? And if we can wait, the powers that be, because it's not us, it's the powers that are making billions of money on this.
So when we were living in Maryland, we worked with, there's a very big consortium of lawyers and consumer advocates that are working to stop 5G in Maryland and in DC. So one of the problems with technology is that it's also very entwined with capitalism and power and greed. And that becomes part of the problem. If you take shungite, it's a mineral and stone, and keep it with you wherever you have any of your equipment, shungite it's called. That helps. There are also things called sterilizers that help to balance the electromagnetics. There are also people who are trained to put copper acupuncture into the earth so let me explain how we know about that first. And it's going to be a very quick story. You're only getting a very short version. We were invited by the lamas of Dharamsala to meet the head of the Druids to do sunrise ceremony in Stonehenge at one time. This is back in 1998. And when the sun came up, we got to see the ley lines of the stones and began to understand the energetics of the earth magnetics. And so there is earth acupuncture that can be done with copper. They're big copper tubings that can go down, but you need to have someone who knows what they're doing. But you can also use, put tobacco around the outside of your property. There's certain stones that can be put out that helps to balance. But we're living more and more in a world where you cannot get away from Bluetooth in your cars. The nuclear physicist and I used to have jokes because we kept crashing our computer. So he said he only has a car that's from 2003 before they had all the electronics. So a lot of it is decisions about which worlds you're going to live in and how you're going to limit yourselves. We don't, it's like the smartphones are making us all stupid, right? How many of you have memorized everybody's phones? We all used to do that. We don't know all the phones anymore. So technology is a help and a hindrance. So each person has to make decisions how to come to peace with that. Does that make sense? Because there's not going to be anywhere you're going to travel in this United States, except on the reservations where they don't have a lot of cell towers, where you're not going to find 5G. And I mean, it's a moneymaker. We hate to say it, but that is the truth of that.
So as our world evolves spiritually, more lovingly, could this change, or we're going to evolve?
Our bodies are evolving and changing constantly. We know people who have beaten cancer. We know people who have had transplants, who've beaten rejecting transplants. We know people who have had miraculous healings. Our bodies are capable of changing. So don't think your body is static.
Thank you.
It's not a victim. It doesn't, your astrology charts your belief systems, your job on this time, at this place, on this planet is to transcend yourself, transcend your beliefs, transcend your parents, transcend all the directions, transcend everything, and let go of those belief systems so you can fly. Only your fear will keep you locked in place. That makes sense?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Listen, we're on a lot of lists. We're not afraid. Okay, any other questions? I know, Irene, we are going way over. We told you the spirits would do this.
I know, that's fine.
One more. Doreen, was that a question or just a okay? Okay. All right.
Since you called out on me, I just want to say I am so inspired and excited as I am making some big transitions, as we are making big transitions in our life.
Good self-correction. That's wonderful.
Yes. And I was just noticing my connection to the earth today. And yeah, the timing is perfect for us. And I'm very inspired and grateful. Thank you.
For all of us. We get to be here to watch it. And we get to wear the t-shirts that say, "We're here, watch out." Goes two ways.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mary Beth.
I'd just like to thank Irene and everybody for welcoming me on the call with Dr. Maria. And it's just so fantastic to know that this is ongoing. What you created, Irene, so many decades ago is still flourishing and in this format. I mean, it's the benefits and the risks of this technological age that we're in allows this kind of community building, which is really so awesome. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Irene.
Well, thank you for being here and for being the connection to Maria. It was beautiful. And I know you a long time, and it's just interesting how we come back around again. And yeah, this community really has grown once it was taken online because of the pandemic. Surprisingly, it just blossomed. And I'm very grateful for everybody who wants to be in that energy space and share the experience. So thank you.
So we're going to be respectful of Irene's time now that we have gone way over her time and your time. So we would like to send the spirits home with your permission and ask that in your way, in your tradition, from your heart, that you can say thank you in whatever way is meaningful to you while we say thank you in our way. And you're welcome to pray along with us. You're welcome to listen. It's been an honor and a privilege. And we mean that from the depths of our heart, from the forgotten people, that you would allow us to speak on their behalf. We are one little human being that knows very little. And there's millions more who know so much more. So the fact that we get to represent them in this small way, in some way, to honor them and our ancestors, we say, Wopelatanka, thank you for this chance to let our people be seen.
I would like to just let you know, and you've been hearing it from the member of this group, to let you know how grateful we are for you to be here, for you to offer to be here and to bring your energy and to bring your wisdom and your knowledge and to sincerely speak to our group from your heart. So it's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
So let's all pray together.